I joined the military for a pretty quick and simple reason that I love our country and wanted to kind of give back and wear the uniform and have that flag patch on my shoulder. So did ROTC at University of Colorado in Boulder and got commissioned as a second lieutenant in May of 2002 into the Transportation Corps. Did my officer basic course out at Fort Eustis, Virginia, got stationed at Fort Hood, Texas as part of the 1st Cavalry Division and got there end of 2003. And then early 2004, orders came down that 1st Cav was going to deploy, and I found myself over there stepping off the plane into Kuwait in March of 2004 and then up in Iraq a few weeks later. So I had 2 jobs in Iraq. I was a platoon leader, so in charge of 20 wonderful men and women, a lot of them just out of high school and trying to find their way in the world. And then I was a convoy commander, so on the roads a lot, leading a whole bunch of vehicles from one point to the next, delivering ammo, food, water, whatever it may be. And April 13th, 2004, day I'll never forget, last day I stood on my own 2 legs. It was a routine convoy through central Baghdad. We started up in Taji, a town right north of Baghdad. Went through right by Bayap, the old Baghdad airport. Big explosion went off. We had hit an IED, and I was in a Humvee with 4 others. The blast kind of pushed us into a guardrail, ricocheted off of it, and ended up crashing into an Iraqi woman's house. And through a series of events, luckily there was a combat medic in the convoy, and he ran up, pulled me out of the vehicle, and the medevac frequency didn't work, so typically a helicopter would come pick you up and bring you to the nearest hospital. So frequency wasn't working, so I was put in the back of a 5-10 vehicle, like a big pickup truck, and rushed to the nearest aid station and then given some pain medication and then flown to the 31st Cache, which is right in central Baghdad in the green zone. So that's where I was rushed into, really life-saving surgery and losing a lot of blood. And they did surgery, I woke up, and when I woke up is when I learned that I had lost my leg. From Iraq, you fly through Landstuhl, Germany, and then before I got to Walter Reed, and timing was kind of everything. My dad happened to be on business over in Vienna, Austria, so when I got to Landstuhl, my dad was able to meet me there, and my sister was traveling over in Slovakia. So my sister and my dad were at my bedside within 24 hours, and then spending a couple days with them in Landstuhl, and then making the long trip back to Walter Reed where my mom met us. I'm sure anyone that's been to Walter Reed can attest that it's a really powerful place. So I got there, I was 24 years old. I had just lost one of my legs trying to figure out what I was gonna do. Would I walk, would I run, would I be independent? And you look around and you see these other soldiers that are missing so much more than you are. Sometimes 2 limbs, 3 limbs, their eyesight, traumatic brain injuries. So it really puts things in perspective. So I felt pretty lucky early on that I had only lost my leg and I had my life, and that was kind of the biggest part of it. Too many give the ultimate sacrifice to be able to make it back at all, and only be missing my left leg. I really felt like one of the lucky ones. Being able to do my rehab at Walter Reed among these other wounded soldiers that had gone through very similar circumstances. We all wore the similar uniforms. We all had gone through these traumatic instances, and whether it was a leg that you lost, whether it was an arm that you lost, whether it was a leg and an arm, you all had the same mission of wanting to regain your independence and get your life back. So you feed off of each other. You see someone that, I saw maybe some guy that had come before me by a month, and I see him in physical therapy, and he's got his prosthetic on and he's up and walking, and I think, okay, he came a month ahead of me, so in a month I'm gonna be there and I'm gonna be up and walking. And it motivates you. The very first day that I got my prosthetic leg, you get it, you put it on, and they say, okay, now stand up and walk. And you're like, well, how the heck am I supposed to walk with this? And I looked across the physical therapy room, and there was a guy missing both of his legs and an arm, and he's walking. So I think, well, what excuse do I have? And then you walk. So you feed off of each other and you motivate each other. And I mean, camaraderie in the military is everywhere. So, and that definitely doesn't go away and becomes even a stronger bond after something happens. While I was in the hospital, word had spread, obviously, that there was a ride going on, a cross-country ride that was gonna benefit us. I'd never been on a bike since I lost my leg. So I decided I was gonna go without a leg. Started in the parking lot, and pretty timid at first, trying to figure out how to balance, how to turn. It was exciting. I was back on a bike. I could I could still ride a bike. It didn't matter that I didn't have a prosthetic leg. I mean, you know, it didn't really matter. I was out here with these guys trying to kind of see what I could do. I don't remember how many miles we rode. I think I had a pretty good fall at one point and came back home with, I might have a scar of the actual chain. But it's a good memory, and you know, you fall and you get right back up, and I think that's kind of the story of life and story of getting injured and a traumatic injury, losing a limb, is that you don't kind of sit back and wait for things to happen. You go out and you make them happen. And then I was approached and asked to be part of the board of directors for the Wounded Warrior Project, and what greater way to be able to give back to, you know, my fellow veterans and this organization that literally helped me get out of my hospital bed. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. So first you're over in Iraq or Afghanistan, you lose a limb, you come back to Walter Reed, and then you have all this camaraderie. I mean, sure, it's been a traumatic and very life-changing, but you have people there that they can relate. And then you leave Walter Reed or wherever you are and you go back home. And a lot of times, you know, some veterans might go back and they might be the only one missing a limb in their entire town. So it's very, I can imagine it can be very scary. It can be wondering what am I going to do with my life? And lucky for us, there's organizations like the Wounded Warrior Project where you can call and number one, you can talk to somebody, you can have a mentor, if you want to go back to school, they can assist you in going back to school and helping you get a job placement. There's alumni program, so even though you're out of Walter Reed and out of that camaraderie, you still can be part of the alumni program and go to events and see these soldiers or these veterans that you recovered with, and now you're all out there together and you're out there riding a bike. I mean, I think it's really neat to be able to do it yourself, but when you are able to do it surrounded by the others that you kind of, you know, grew up with or grew out of this recovery phase with, it just brings that bond even closer. And so I was medically retired in 2005. I learned of the U.S. Paralympics, which is just like the Olympics, but for athletes with disabilities, and kind of thought, well, that's pretty cool. If I make the Paralympics, I can go over and wear this USA uniform on my back and represent this country. I defended it over in Iraq, and just a very proud American every day, really. So had that as a goal, and decided to give it a shot in the sport of swimming. And again, to make a long story pretty short, ended up at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, swam, and was a long shot to make the team, but ended up making the Paralympic swim team for swimming, and got to swim over in Beijing in the water cube, and didn't win any medals, but had the opportunity to carry the flag at closing ceremonies, and just kind of, you know, one of those moments you kind of wish you could go back and relive over and over again. And then after the Paralympics in 2008, started to run, and running was kind of something I had wanted to do. So started to run. I knew I could swim, and thanks to Soldier Ride, and I knew I could ride a bike also. So I thought, well, why not put all three of those together and try a triathlon? And there's a group called the Challenged Athletes Foundation based out of San Diego, California, and they have a group called Operation Rebound, and they invited me out to do a triathlon. Went out. I loved it. I loved the challenge of the swim, doing the bike and the run, doing all three of them, worrying about the different prosthetics you have to wear, and I was hooked. So from 2010, I became part of the Paratriathlon national team. You know, before I lost my leg, I thought triathletes were crazy. I mean, who would want to swim, bike, and run in the same day, much less one after the other? So the fact that I'm now a very happy para-triathlete and being able to compete around the nation and around the world and just get these experiences, you know, life changes, and changed mine for the better. I remember the day of the Boston bombings, and I remember I was on a flight and I landed and got off the plane and saw the news, and I mean, we had friends out there running the Boston Marathon. I had this opportunity to go out to Boston and to meet some of these new amputees through the Semper Fi Fund, and they flew me out there, and it was a wine event. It was at a winery, and I remember I walked in and looked over, and there was Celeste, who's missing her leg, one above the knee and one below the knee. There's the woman who is still on crutches and trying to figure out what she's going to do. There's the husband and wife who are both missing their leg below the knee, and being able to talk with them and doesn't matter if I was in Iraq and they were in Boston. The fact of it is, we both got injured in the same way. They were both bombs that went off, and we found ourselves, living a life we never thought that we would live. So to be able to go out there and talk with them and, hopefully provide some hope of what they can do, and to be there as a friend, and if female to female, for females that were injured, there's, not quite as many, and as a fellow amputee and as a prosthetist and as an athlete, and really kind of hopefully be able to show them that their life isn't over, that it does go on. And sometimes, not that April 13th, 2004 for me was ever supposed to happen, not that they were ever supposed to be where they are, but if you surround yourself with the right people and the right organizations, sometimes I think life can end up being even better than it was.
Yeah, so I competed in the 2016 Rio Paralympics in the sport of triathlon, and it was the debut year that triathlon was a part of the Paralympic Games. And just so happened that the race was on September 11th, and I ended up getting a bronze medal, but my teammates and friends got gold and silver, so it was like a USA sweep, and it was probably one of the greatest days of my life. Yeah, my husband, Brian, we've been married just about 3 years, or a little over 3 years, and we have a 3.5-year-old son named Dallas and a almost 1-year-old daughter named Millie. Yeah, being a mom is my favorite job in the whole world. So a few things. So I'm a triathlon coach, so I do some triathlon coaching. Most of it's online. I have a nonprofit in Chicago called Dare to Try. We get athletes with physical disabilities into the sport of triathlon. So I help coach some of our programs there. I do motivational speaking, so I travel around to speak, and then trying to work my way back up after having my baby into the elite athletic world and make it go for Tokyo in 2020. So most of my days are kind of dictated by my training. My advice would be to, if you're newly injured and just coming back, I mean, that's the hardest time. And there are so many opportunities out there for veterans, for injured veterans to kind of show them firsthand that their life can still go on. So my advice is to not say you can't do something until you give it a try, to take advantage of opportunities that are out there, because there's so many of them. And, if you have an opportunity to go and ski down a mountain, and you are in a sit ski where you're sitting down, or you're learning on one leg and you don't think you can do it, well, go try it. And I'm confident that, number one, you will not only do it, but you will enjoy it, and you will realize how much else you can do. So surround yourself with people that love and care about you and want you to get better. Take the opportunities out there, and then just give something a try.